The refusal did not happen with a shout. It happened with a click, a soft plastic sound. The sound of a mouse button being pressed by an index finger that was slightly damp with sweat. Elias Thorne did not look up immediately. He kept his eyes on the screen. He needed the glow of the monitor to anchor him. He needed the rows of numbers, the actuarial tables, the credit risk algorithms. He needed the digital shield that separated him from the man sitting on the other side of the mahogany desk. The air in the office was cold. It was always cold. 68 degrees. Summer or winter, raining or dry, the bank maintained a constant, sterile 68 degrees. It was a temperature designed to keep people alert, to keep meetings short, to ensure that comfort never superseded calculation. Elias cleared his throat. It was a small, dry sound that seemed to vanish instantly into the thick carpet. "Mr. Vane," Elias said. He finally looked up. Marcus Vane sat perfectly still. He was wearing a charcoal suit that absorbed the light rather than reflecting it. The fabric looked like it cost more than Elias's car. There was no watch on his wrist, no ring on his finger, just stillness and eyes that were dark, patient, and terrifyingly calm. "I'm afraid," Elias continued, the script rising in his throat like bile, "that we cannot proceed with the financing at this time." Silence. The kind of silence that has weight. The kind of silence that presses against your eardrums until you want to pop them. Elias waited for the reaction. He was trained for reactions. He was the senior vice president of commercial lending at Sterling and Harrows. He had seen men cry in this office. He had seen them beg. He had seen them throw heavy crystal paperweights at the wall. He had seen the desperate bargaining of people who watched their dreams evaporate into a spreadsheet. But Marcus Vane did not move. He did not blink. He simply watched Elias with an expression of mild curiosity, as if Elias were a specimen in a jar. "The financing," Vane said. His voice was deep, resonant, like cello strings vibrating in an empty room. "It is a standard bridge loan." "Fully collateralized?" "Yes," Elias said quickly. "The collateral is substantial. 10 times the loan value," Vane said. "Correct? Liquid assets?" Vane said. "Yes. So the risk is zero." "The risk is never zero, Mr. Vane," Elias recited. He tapped the enter key on his keyboard, bringing up the compliance window. It was a reflex. Whenever he felt cornered, he summoned the data. "The algorithm flags certain variables," Elias said. "The nature of the acquisition. The speed of the requested transfer. The historical data regarding the zip code of the primary development." He was using technical words to build a wall. He was hiding behind the system, and he knew it. Marcus Vane was a billionaire. Everyone knew who he was. He had built an empire on logistics, shipping, silent infrastructure that made the world move. He was one of the wealthiest black men in the hemisphere. But in this office, under the fluorescent lights, inside the system of Sterling and Harrows, he was just a file with a red flag, and Elias Thorne was the man paid to respect the flag. "Variables?" Vane repeated. He leaned forward just an inch. The leather of the chair did not creak. "You have my financials, Mr. Thorne. You have the audits. You know that I could buy this branch out of petty cash. Assets are not the only metric for liquidity assessment," Elias said. He felt the sweat trickling down his rib cage, freezing in the 68-degree air. Why was he nervous? He was following protocol. The compliance officer had sent the memo that morning. "Review with extreme caution. Discretionary refusal recommended due to reputational exposure." Reputational exposure. That was the phrase. It meant nothing and everything. It meant the bank didn't like the noise surrounding Vane's new project. They didn't like the politics of it. They didn't like the neighborhood he was trying to buy. But they couldn't say that, so they said, "Rister." "Thorne," Vane said softly. "Look at me." Elias forced himself to hold the gaze. "I am not asking for a favor," Vane said. "I am a customer of this bank. I have held accounts here for 20 years. I am asking for a service that I am qualified for. If you deny this loan, the deal falls through by noon tomorrow. You know this?" "I am aware of the timeline," Elias said. "Then you are aware that a refusal is an act of sabotage." The word hung in the air. Sabotage. Elias stiffened. "It is a business decision, Mr. Vane, based on our current risk appetite." He reached for his water glass. He took a sip. He placed the glass back down. He rotated it 3 degrees to the right so the logo faced him perfectly. He always did that. If the logo wasn't facing him, He couldn't think. It was a small ritual, a tiny act of order in a chaotic world. Align the glass. Trust the protocol, survive the day, risk appetite, Vane said. He smiled then. It was not a nice smile, it did not reach his eyes. It was the smile of a man who has just confirmed a sad hypothesis. Tell me, Mr. Thorne, Vane said. Is it the algorithm, or is it you? I don't understand the question. The machine gives you a score, Vane said. But you have the override key. I see it on your dashboard. That gray button on the bottom right. Elias froze. How did he know that? You have the seniority? Vane continued. You can authorize this. You can look at the collateral, look at the history, and say that the machine is wrong. You can be a human being. Elias looked at the gray button override. It was there. He could click it. If he clicked it, the funds would release. The deal would go through. Vane would get his property. And Elias would get a call from the regional director. He would be asked to explain why he ignored the compliance memo. He would be asked why he took a personal risk for a client who was considered volatile. He would be audited. His bonus would be frozen. His pension, which was only 7 years away from vesting fully, would be scrutinized. He looked at the gray button. He looked at Vane. He thought about his daughter's tuition at the private school in Connecticut. He thought about the lease on his Audi. He thought about the safety of doing exactly what he was told. Cowardice didn't feel like fear. It felt like logic. It felt like being sensible. I cannot override the decision, Elias said. His voice was steady. He was proud of that. The decision stands, Mr. Vane. Sterling and Harrows cannot service this loan. Vane stared at him for 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Then he stood up. The movement was fluid, silent. He buttoned his jacket. He didn't look angry. He looked disappointed. Not in the outcome, but in Elias. As if Elias had failed a test he didn't even know he was taking. Very well, Vane said. He reached into his pocket. Elias flinched, his heart hammering against his ribs. But Vane only pulled out a pen. A black fountain pen with gold inlay. He placed it on the desk. You should keep this, Vane said. Mr. Vane, I cannot accept gifts. It is not a gift, Vane interrupted. It is a reminder. A reminder of what? That you had a choice. Vane turned and walked toward the door. His shoes made no sound on the carpet. Elias watched him go. He wanted to say something else. He wanted to apologize. He wanted to explain about the memo, about the regional director, about the 68 degrees and the pension and the rules. But he said nothing. The heavy oak door clicked shut. Elias was alone. The office was silent. The monitor hummed. Elias looked at the pen on the desk. It was heavy, cold metal. He shouldn't touch it. It was against compliance to leave personal items from clients on the desk. He should call security. He should log the interaction. But instead, he reached out. He picked up the pen. He uncapped it. The nib was sharp, gold, and stained with black ink. He looked at the gray override button on his screen. He closed the window. He deleted the draft of the approval he had written 2 hours ago. He sanitized his hands. Once, twice, 3 times. He rubbed the gel into his skin until it burned, until the smell of alcohol filled his nose, masking the scent of expensive cologne that Vane had left behind. He looked at the empty chair. It's just business, Elias whispered to the empty room. The air conditioner cycled on with a low roar. It was 40:15 p.m. The incident was over, or so he thought. The world did not end at 40:16 p.m. The ceiling did not crack. The fluorescent lights did not flicker. Elias sat in his chair, his heart rate slowly decelerating from 100 beats per minute to a resting 72. He watched the second hand on the wall clock sweep past the 6. He had expected something. A shout from the lobby, security alarms, a phone call from legal. But there was only the low, steady hum of the server room down the hall. Marcus Vane walked out of the bank and into the street, and the bank simply swallowed the space he had left behind. Elias turned back to his screen. He had work to do. The refusal was not complete until it was documented. The system required a eulogy for the deal. He opened the loan disposition form. It was a standard interface. Drop-down menace, field 1 an applicant name. He typed Van Marcius. Field 20, requested amount. He entered the number. It was a string of zeros that would have changed the skyline of the city. Field 30, disposition. He clicked the arrow. Approved, conditioned. Denied, he clicked denied. The screen blinked once, a microsecond of processing, then Field 4 appeared. Reason code. This was the most important part. This was where the truth was sanitized. He could not write, "The board is afraid of his politics." He could not write. The compliance officer whispered that this money was too loud. He could not write. I was scared to press the gray button. The system had a language for this, a language of beige neutrality. Elias scrolled through the options. Insufficient credit history. False. Inadequate collateral. False. Debt-to-income ratio. False. He found it near the bottom. Reason code 7 alpha is structural risk market exposure alignment. It meant nothing. It was a phantom phrase. It sounded prudent. It sounded mathematical. It suggested that the market was the problem, not the man, and certainly not the bank. Elias clicked it. Structural risk. He felt a wave of relief wash over him. It wasn't his decision anymore. It was code 7 alpha. He hit submit. The file vanished from his active queue. Archived. Buried. Done? Elias exhaled. He adjusted his tie. He looked at the black pen Vane had left on the desk. He picked it up. He should throw it in the trash. Or take it to the lost and found. Instead, he opened his top drawer, the one where he kept his breath mints and his spare staples, and dropped the pen inside. He slid the drawer shut. Out of sight. Knock, knock. The voice was cheerful. Too cheerful? Elias looked up. It was Sarah from Risk Management. She was holding a compostable green salad bowl and a diet soda. She leaned against the doorframe, casual, relaxed. "Saw Vane leaving?" she said. She shook her salad container, mixing the dressing. The sound was wet and rhythmic. "Shek, shke." He looked serious, she added. He was disappointed, Elias said. "Did you do it?" "I declined the financing." Sarah nodded, taking a sip of her soda. "Good call," she said. Regional was watching that one. "Seriously, Elias?" "Good call. Had the collateral," Elias said. He didn't know why he said it. He was defending a ghost. "Collateral isn't everything," Sarah said. She stabbed a cherry tomato with a plastic fork. "You saw the memo. The optics were messy. Community displacement concerns, potential protests. We don't need headlines right now. We need stability." "Right," Elias said. "Stability. You protected the bank," she said. "That's the job. Don't overthink it." She crunched on the tomato. "Anyway," she said, changing the frequency of her voice to something bright and social. "Are you coming to the break room? It's Gary's birthday." Elias blinked. "Gary?" "Junior analyst." "Gary." "The kid with the loud ties." "It's his 25th. "There's cake." I have a few emails." "Come on," Sarah said. "Take a break. You just slayed a dragon. You deserve a slice of sheet cake." She smiled. It was a kind smile. She was a nice person. She coached her daughter's soccer team. She organized the office charity drive. She had just congratulated him for destroying a black man's empire because of optics, and now she wanted him to eat cake. "I'll be right there," Elias said. Sarah left. Elias stood up. He felt lightheaded. He walked out of his office down the hallway. The carpet muffled his steps. The air remained 68 degrees. He passed the cubicles of the junior loan officers. They were typing, answering phones. "Yes, Mrs. Higgins, I see the deposit here." "No, sir." "The rate is fixed for 12 months. The machinery of capital hummed along, indifferent to the crater Elias had just opened in the universe. He reached the break room. There were balloons taped to the water cooler. Cheap blue balloons. One of them was already deflating, sagging sadly against the plastic tank. About 15 people were gathered around the laminate table. Gary stood in the middle, blushing, holding a paper plate. A grocery store cake sat in the center of the table. White frosting, blue script, "Happy 25th, Gary." "Here he is!" someone shouted. "The man of the hour," someone else said, clapping Elias on the back. They weren't talking about Vane. They didn't know about Vane. They were just happy to see the vice president joining the tribe. "Speech," Sarah joked. Elias forced a smile. It felt like stretching rubber over a skull. "Happy birthday, Gary," Elias said. "Don't spend it all in one place, Elater." Polite, corporate laughter. "All right, let's sing," Sarah commanded. They began to sing. "Happy birthday to you," Elias joined in. He moved his lips. He made the sounds. But his mind was drifting. He was thinking about the structural risk. He was thinking about the 10 times collateral. He was thinking about the stillness of Marcus Vane. "Happy birthday to you." The voices rose in a dissonant chorus. Why did this feel so violent? It was just a birthday party. It was routine. But the juxtaposition made his stomach turn. Here they were, celebrating the passage of time for a boy who checked spreadsheets, while 10 minutes ago, Elias had canceled the future of a man who built cities, and the system supported both actions equally. The system approved the cake. The system approved the denial. They were both just transactions. Happy birthday, dear Gaiari. Elias looked at the knife on the table. A large, serrated bread knife used to cut the cake. It caught the overhead light. Happy birthday to you. Applause. Gary blew out the candles. Smoke drifted up, smelling of wax and sugar. Cake time, Sarah declared. She picked up the knife. She sliced through the white frosting. She handed a piece to Elias on a flimsy paper plate. Eat up, she whispered. Sugar rush helps the stress. Elias looked at the cake. It was a corner piece. Extra frosting, he took a plastic fork. He took a bite. It was cloyingly sweet. Chemical vanilla. He swallowed it. It went down easy. Thanks, he said. So, Gary said, turning to Elias with wide, eager eyes. I heard you had a big meeting. Vane Logistics. The room went slightly quiet. Junior analysts loved gossip. Yes, Elias said. Is it true he's trying to buy the West Ward? Gary asked. My uncle lives there. Says Vane wants to tear down the old cannery. Not anymore? Sarah interjected smoothly. Elias handled it. Gary looked at Elias with new respect. Wow, Gary said. You shut him down. Elias looked at the boy. He saw the admiration. Gary didn't see a destroyed dream. He saw power. He saw a vice president exercising authority. He saw what he wanted to become. It was a compliance issue, Elias said. We have standards, Gary. If we bend them for the big fish, the whole net breaks. He was reciting the script again. And as he said it, he felt the guilt recede. It was true, wasn't it? Rules were rules. If Vane wanted the money, he should have been different. He should have fit the code. He should have been less exposure and more standard. Exactly, Gary said. Standards. Elias took another bite of cake. The sweetness wasn't so bad now. It tasted like belonging. He finished the slice. He threw the plate in the trash bin. It landed on top of a pile of other dirty plates. Trash on trash. Back to the mines, Elias said. You're a machine, Elias, Sarah said. Elias walked back to his office. He felt stronger. He had passed the test. He had rejected the chaos. He had affirmed the order. He sat down at his desk. He woke up his computer. He had 3 new emails. One was from the regional director. Subject Q3 portfolio review. Body Elias saw the flag on the Vane file. Disposition noted. Smart move. Let's discuss the allocation of those reserved funds for the Midtown Luxury project instead. More alignment there. Elias smiled. Midtown Luxury. Safe, predictable. Standard. He typed a reply, agreed. We'll prepare the term sheet. He hit send. He reached for his water glass. He aligned it with the coaster. Everything was in its place. The incident was over. It was normalized. It was just a Tuesday. But as he reached for his mouse, his hand brushed against the handle of the top drawer. He paused. He could feel the weight of the black pen inside, just sitting there. In the dark, he ignored it. He went back to work. Outside, the sun began to set, casting long, sharp shadows across the city that Elias Thorne believed he had just saved. 90 days passed. 90 days is a fiscal quarter. It is the standard unit of time in the banking world. Enough time to report earnings. Enough time to forget a face. The office remained 68 degrees. Elias Thorne settled into the rhythm of his own survival. The Vane file was buried deep in the archives, a digital skeleton in a server farm 3 states away. Elias had stopped thinking about the refusal mostly. He still had the pen. It lay in the top drawer, next to the staples. Every morning, before he logged in, Elias would open the drawer about 2 inches. He would look at the black lacquer barrel. He would look at the gold clip. He would verify it was still there. Then he would close the drawer and begin his day. It was a tick, a superstition, like checking the stove before leaving the house. He needed to know the reminder was contained. The bank was thriving. The Midtown Luxury project, the safe investment, the one that replaced Vane's proposal, was in full swing. It was a massive development. 3 high-rise towers, glass, steel, and high rents. It was exactly the kind of project Sterling and Harrows loved. The developer, a man named Paulson, was loud, white, and leveraged to the hilt, but the algorithm liked him. His zip codes were correct. His credit history was a straight line of approved debt. Elias managed the account. It was supposed to be easy. Draw down the funds, verify the milestones, release the next tranche. Clockwork. Until Tuesday, Paulson requested an emergency meeting. He didn't make an appointment. He just showed up. He stormed past the receptionist, his face a mottled red that clashed with his blue dress shirt. Elias stood up as Paulson barged into the office. "We have a problem," Paulson said. He didn't sit down, he paced. 3 steps left, 3 steps right, mister. "Paulson," Elias said using his calmest voice, "please, have a seat." "I don't want a seat, Elias. I want steel." "Steel?" "Structural beams." The Ike beams for Tower 1. They were supposed to be on site Monday morning, and they weren't. The trucks never came. Elias frowned. "Delays happen, Mr. Paulson. The supply chain is fragile." "It's not a delay," Paulson snapped. "It's a ghosting. The logistics company sent a notification at 400 a.m. Unforeseen routing conflict. That's it. No ETA, no rescheduling. Who is the carrier?" Elias asked. He reached for his keyboard. "North State Transit," Paulson said. "They're the biggest in the region. We have a contract." Elias typed the name. North State Transit. He pulled up the corporate profile. Standard shipping firm. Reliable. Rated A-. "I'll make a call," Elias said. "We have contacts at North State. We finance their fleet leases. I can pull a string." Paulson stopped pacing. "Do it," he said. "Every day the cranes sit idle. I'm burning $50,000 of your bank's money." Paulson left. Elias made the call. He called his contact at North State, a man named Jim who usually answered on the first ring. This time it went to voicemail. Elias called the main line. He got a receptionist. "I'm calling regarding the Paulson delivery," Elias said. "Priority code Alpha 6. One moment," the voice said. Music played. Generic synthesizer jazz. Elias waited. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. He looked at the drawer with the pen. Finally, a manager came on the line. "Mr. Thorne," the voice said. "Apologies for the hold. The beams," Elias said. "Where are they?" "We have a situation," the manager said. "A routing priority override. Override. We had a larger contract invoke a penalty clause. They demanded immediate capacity allocation. We had to divert the fleet." "What contract takes precedence over a Skyline project?" Elias demanded. "We are Sterling and Harrows." "I can't disclose the client, sir." "NDA?" "I need those trucks, Jim, or whoever you are." "They're gone, Mr. Thorne. They're halfway to the coast. We can maybe get you capacity in 3 weeks." 3 weeks? Best I can do?" The line went dead. Elias sat in the silence. 3 weeks of delay on the Midtown project meant interest payments would stack up. It meant the risk rating would degrade. It meant the safe bet was becoming unsafe. Elias felt a prickle of unease. He opened the browser on his second monitor. He went to the Secretary of State's business registry. He searched for North State Transit. He looked at the ownership structure. North State was owned by Tree Regional Holdings. He clicked on Tri Regional Holdings. It was a holding company based in Delaware. The officers were listed as lawyers. But near the bottom, under Strategic Partners, there was a link to a parent entity for tax purposes. V Logistical Group. Elias froze. The V stood for Vane. He knew it. He didn't need to click it, but he did anyway. Marcus Vane, CEO. Elias leaned back in his chair. The air conditioner blasted cold air onto his neck. Vane owned the trucks. Vane owned the delay. Elias looked at the phone. He should tell someone. He should call Sarah and Risk. He should call the regional director. He should say he is doing this on purpose. He bought the shipping company, or he already owned it, and now he is choking our project. But as he rehearsed the words in his head, they sounded insane. A billionaire sabotaging a construction site. It sounded like paranoia. It sounded like a conspiracy theory. And what was the crime? Prioritizing a contract. Business is business. Vane hadn't broken a law. He had simply applied leverage. Elias closed the browser window. He went to the break room for coffee. Sarah was there, stirring sugar into a mug. Paulson looked mad, she said. Supply chain issues, Elias said. Ah, she nodded sagely. The market is volatile right now. Everyone is feeling it. My husband has been waiting 6 months for a dishwasher. She accepted it. Just like that. The market? It was a god they all worship. If the market caused a delay, it was an act of nature. It was rain. It was gravity. Nobody asked who the market was. Yeah, Elias said. The market. He went back to his desk. He started noticing the pattern everywhere. He pulled up the watch list, the list of distressed loans the bank was monitoring. 3 other projects were flagged red this week. One was a retail complex. Anchor tenant pulled out. Who was the anchor tenant? A grocery chain? Who owned the distribution network for that chain? Elias checked. Vane. Another was a manufacturing plant. Raw materials shortage. Who controlled the rail spur that fed the plant? Vane. It was subtle. It was boring. It was invisible to anyone who wasn't looking for the fingerprints of a specific man. Marcus Vane wasn't attacking the bank. He wasn't suing them. He wasn't making speeches. He was slowly, quietly, legally suffocating their assets. He was turning their safe investments into failures. And the terrified part of Elias, the part that had refused the loan in the first place, realized something worse. Elias pulled up Marcus Vane's personal account at Sterling and Harrow's. He hadn't closed it. In fact, the balance had grown. He was depositing cash, millions. He was feeding the bank with one hand and strangling its investments with the other. He was becoming their biggest depositor and their biggest threat simultaneously. Elias stared at the numbers. They were beautiful round numbers. The bank loved these numbers. The regional director would look at Vane's deposit growth and give himself a bonus. They didn't see the trap. They only saw the money. Elias felt a vibration in his pocket, his cell phone. He pulled it out. Unknown number. He usually didn't answer unknown numbers. But the office felt too quiet. The walls felt too close. He swiped right. This is Elias Thorne, Mr. Thorne. The voice was deep. Cello strings in an empty room. Elias stopped breathing. Vane. I trust the afternoon finds you well, Vane said. What do you want? Elias whispered. He looked at the door. It was closed. I am merely calling to check on my accounts, Vane said. I noticed a hold on a transfer. A large deposit coming in from North State Transit. The name dropped like a stone. You know, Elias said. You know about the beams. I know about logistics, Mr. Thorne. I know that things get stuck when the infrastructure is misaligned. You're doing this? Elias said. His voice was shaking. You're sabotaging Paulson? I am running a business, Vane said calmly, just like you. I make decisions based on risk and reward. Sometimes, servicing a certain route is just not compliant with our current operational capacity. He was using Elias's words. He was mirroring the rejection. Why? Elias asked, because Vane said, and Elias could hear the smile through the phone. I want you to understand how fragile your safety really is. You're hurting the bank. Am I? Check the deposit I just made. Elias looked at the screen. The number refreshed. A $5 million deposit had just cleared. I am your best customer, Mr. Thorne, Vane said softly. And I am your worst nightmare. You should probably approve that transfer. The algorithm likes it. The line clicked dead. Elias sat there holding the phone. The screen on his computer blinked. Deposit pending approval 5,000 Odru. Source North State Transit dividends. The system flagged it as green. Low risk. High value. The gray button appeared. Approve. Elias looked at the button. If he approved it, the bank got richer. If he approved it, he was helping Vane profit from the delay that was destroying Paulson. If he didn't approve it, he would have to explain why he rejected $5 million of clean cash. He was trapped. The pattern wasn't just around him. It was running through him. He was the switch in the circuit. He reached out. His finger hovered over the mouse. He clicked. Approved. The money moved. Elias opened the top drawer. He touched the cold metal of the black pen. He realized then that the pen wasn't a reminder of the past. It was a tool for the future, and he had just picked it up again. The default notice on the Paulson account arrived on a Thursday. It was a piece of paper. Just a standard sheet of letterhead, 80-pound stock, cream-colored. It stated that the Midtown Luxury project was insolvent. Work had stopped. The cranes were silent. The interest payments had not been made for 60 days. Sterling and Harrow's was now the proud owner of a half-finished skeleton of steel and concrete that was worth less than the ground it sat on. Elias held the paper. He should have felt panic, but the office was still 68 degrees. The lights were still humming. Panic was a luxury for people who didn't understand how the system worked. When a project failed, the bank didn't just cry about it. The bank sanitized the wound. They packaged the bad debt. They wrote it down against their tax liability. They sold the distressed asset to the highest bidder to recoup a fraction of the capital. It was a fire sale. We need to offload the note, the regional director told Elias over the phone. His voice was tight. Get it off the books before the quarter ends. If we carry this loss into Q4, the shareholders will riot. I have a buyer lined up, Elias said. Oh, a private equity group. Aurora Distressed Assets. They specialize in stalled construction. How much are they offering? 30 cents on the dollar. There was a pause on the line. 30 cents. A 70% loss, millions of dollars evaporated. Take it, the director said. Just take it. Wash our hands of it. Elias hung up. He prepared the sale documents. He felt like a butcher trimming rot from a prime cut. He sent the contract to Aurora Distressed Assets. They signed within the hour. The money was wired. The bleeding stopped. The Midtown project was gone. Elias sat back in his chair. He felt hollow. He had followed every rule. He had backed the safe, white developer. He had refused the risky, black tycoon. And the result was a catastrophe. Why? He opened the file for Aurora Distressed Assets. Due diligence required him to verify the signatories. He had skimmed it before. Standard LLC structure. Anonymous partners. But now, with the deal done, he felt a pull. A morbid curiosity. He wanted to know who had just bought the bank's failure for pennies. He clicked on the Beneficial Ownership tab. It was a nested structure. Aurora was owned by Zenith Capital. Zenith Capital was owned by a trust in the Caymans. Elias traced it. He was good at this. It was the one part of his job where he felt like a detective, not a bureaucrat. He followed the digital trail through 3 layers of shell companies. And then he found the trustee. The name wasn't Vane. That would have been too easy. The trustee was a law firm, Holloway and Associates. Elias stared at the name. He knew that firm. Why did he know that firm? He closed his eyes. He replayed the last year of his life. He replayed the meetings, the emails, and then he remembered. The loan application. The one from 90 days ago. The one he had rejected. He opened the archived file Van Marcus. He scrolled down to the legal representation section of the application. Counsel of Record. Holloway and Associates. Elias stopped breathing. His heart kicked against his ribs like a trapped bird. Vane owned Aurora. Vane had bought the debt. Elias stood up. He walked to the window. He looked out at the city skyline. He could see the halted cranes of the Midtown project in the distance. He started to do the math. Not the bank's math, the real math. Vane had asked for a loan of $50 million to buy a property in the West Ward. Elias had said no. So Vane had used his logistics company to strangle the Midtown project. The Midtown project collapsed. The bank lost $40 million on the default. The bank sold the remaining asset to Aurora for $12 million. Aurora Vane now owned the Midtown project. He had acquired a $100 million site for $12 million. Elias pressed his forehead against the cold glass. It wasn't just revenge. It was arbitrage. Vane had leveraged Elias's own prejudice to get a discount. He knew Elias would protect the safe investment. He knew Elias would reject the risk. So he created a scenario where the safe investment failed, and he was the only one standing there with a bucket to catch the gold as it fell. But there was something else. Something nagging at the back of Elias's mind. He went back to the desk. He looked at the rejected application again. He forced himself to read the narrative section. The part he usually skipped. Project description: mixed-use development focusing on affordable housing and community supply chain integration. And there, in paragraph 3, the applicant currently holds option contracts on the adjacent parcels, contingent on financing. Adjacent parcels. Elias opened the map. He typed in the coordinates of the West Ward property Vane had wanted to buy. Then he typed in the coordinates of the Midtown luxury project. He zoomed out. They weren't across town. They were back to back. They shared an alley. If Vane had gotten the loan, he would have built his community center next to the luxury tower. The luxury tower would have hated it. Property values might have dipped. But because Elias refused the loan, Vane didn't build next door. Vane bought the tower itself. Now Vane owned the whole block. He owned the West Ward site and the Midtown site. He had consolidated the entire district. And he had done it using the bank's money, or rather, the money the bank lost. Elias felt sick. He realized then that the incident wasn't the refusal. The refusal was the trap. Vane had walked into this office knowing exactly who Elias was. He knew Elias was a coward. He knew Elias followed the rules. He knew Elias would check the zip code and panic. Vane had handed him the gun, pointed it at the bank's foot, and waited for Elias to pull the trigger. And Elias had done it. He had done it with a smile. He had done it while eating birthday cake. Elias looked at the phone. He needed to call someone. He needed to scream. He played us! He wanted to shout it into the hallway. He didn't want the loan! He wanted the default! But he couldn't. Because if he explained it, if he explained how it happened, he would have to admit that he had been manipulated. He would have to admit that his bias was so predictable, so reliable, that a billionaire could build a business model around it. To reveal the plot was to reveal his own smallness, his own fatal predictability. Elias sat down. The revelation settled over him like a shroud. The system hadn't failed. The system had worked perfectly. The system was designed to concentrate wealth. And Marcus Vane was simply better at using the system than Elias was. The phone rang. It was Sarah from Risk. "Elias," she said. "Great news?" "What?" "The sale to Aurora cleared. We posted the loss, but the cash is in. We made the quarter. Barely. But we made it." "One made it," Elias repeated. "Regional's happy?" Sarah said. "They're talking about a commendation for quick action on a distressed asset. You saved us from a total write-off." Elias closed his eyes. He was being praised. He had just handed the keys to the city to the man he tried to lock out, and he was being praised for it. "That's good," Elias said. "Good. You okay?" Sarah asked. "You sound tired. Just a long week. Go home, Elias." "You did good." Elias hung up. He didn't go home. He opened the top drawer. He took out the black pen. He held it in his hand. He uncapped it. He looked at the gold nib. He looked at the blank notepad on his desk. He wrote one word: predictable. The ink was black and permanent. He stared at the word until the letters seemed to separate and float on the page. He understood now. Vane wasn't the enemy. Vane was the teacher. And the lesson was costing Elias his soul. But the lesson wasn't over. Because if Vane owned the debt, and Vane owned the trucking company, and Vane was the bank's biggest depositor, then Vane wasn't just outside the walls anymore. He was inside the foundation. And Elias was the only one who knew where the cracks were, or where they were about to open. The cranes began to move on a Monday. From his office window, Elias could see the long steel arms swinging against the gray sky. They were lifting beams. They were pouring concrete. The Midtown Luxury Project was alive again. But it wasn't called Midtown anymore. The new signage had gone up overnight. The Vane Center for Innovation and Living. Elias stood at the glass, watching the construction. He held a cup of coffee that had gone cold 20 minutes ago. The irony was perfect. Perfect and circular. Sterling and Harrows had financed the original project for Paulson. Paulson had failed because Elias refused to loan Vane $50 million. Now, Vane owned Paulson's project. And because Vane was a platinum client with significant deposits, Sterling and Harrows was financing the construction for him. The bank was paying the man who had robbed them to build the building they had lost, and Elias was managing the account. He was the point man. He approved the drawdowns. Every time he clicked authorize, he was sending money to the architect of his own humiliation. But that wasn't the problem. The problem was the audit committee. They arrived at 10:00 a.m., 3 men and 1 woman in dark suits. They didn't look like bankers. They looked like undertakers. They took over the conference room. They brought boxes of files. They were there to conduct the post-mortem analysis of the Paulson default. $40 million had been lost. Yes, they had recouped $12 million from the sale to Aurora. But $28 million was still a hole in the balance sheet. The system does not like holes. The system requires a plug. Usually, the plug is a market correction or unforeseen macroeconomic factors. But $28 million was too specific. It smelled of negligence. Elias was summoned to the conference room at 11:30. The regional director was there. He sat at the head of the table, looking pained. "Sit down, Elias," he said. Elias sat. The lead auditor, a woman with glasses that magnified her eyes into accusations, opened a folder. "We have reviewed the timeline of the Paulson default," she said. Her voice was dry, like shuffling paper. "We have identified a procedural gap in the initial vetting of the supply chain contingencies." Elias felt his stomach tighten. Supply chain. They were getting close. If they looked hard enough, they would see the connection to North State Transit. They would see Vane. And if they saw Vane, they would ask why Elias, the vice president, hadn't noticed that his biggest depositor was destroying his biggest loan. They would call it incompetence, or worse, collusion. The insurance binder, the auditor said. Elias blinked. The what? The business interruption insurance? She said. It wasn't filed correctly. Clause 44B requires a rider for logistics failures. It was missing from the initial packet. And Elias stared at her. A missing rider? That was nothing. That was a clerical error. Even with the rider, the insurance wouldn't have covered a deliberate boycott. It was irrelevant. Because that rider was missing, the auditor continued. The bank cannot file a claim for the lost interest revenue. The error cost us an additional $2 million in recoverable assets. She closed the folder. We need to know who prepared the initial packet. The room went silent. Elias knew who prepared the packet. He looked at the regional director. The director looked back. His eyes were pleading. Give them a name, Elias. Give them a name so they can leave. The intake was handled by the junior team, Elias said slowly. Who specifically? The auditor asked. Elias looked at his hands. He thought about the birthday cake. He thought about the cheap blue balloons. Jerry Wilson, Elias said. The name hung in the air. Gary, the kid with the loud ties. The kid who thought Elias was a hero. Jerry Wilson, the auditor repeated. She wrote it down. Is he the junior analyst on the floor? Yes, Elias said. And you supervised him? I signed off on the packet, Elias said. But the data entry, the specific compilation of the binders, that is a junior function? I see. The auditor looked at the director. This is actionable, she said. Gross negligence in documentation. It's grounds for immediate termination for cause? Termination, Elias said, and liability, she added. It allows us to categorize the loss as operational error rather than credit judgment. It helps our capital ratios. It was a math trick. If it was a bad loan, the bank looked stupid. If it was a bad employee, the bank looked like a victim. They needed a victim. I see, Elias said. Send Mr. Wilson in, the director said. Elias stood up. His legs felt heavy. He walked out of the conference room. He walked down the hall to the bullpen. Gary was at his desk. He was eating a sandwich. He was laughing at something on his computer screen. He looked up as Elias approached. Hey, boss, Gary said. How's the Inquisition going? He grinned. He had no idea. Gary, Elias said. They need to see you. Me. Gary wiped crumbs from his mouth. Did I win a prize? Just go in. Just tell the truth. About what? The Paulson files. The insurance binder. Gary's smile faded. The binder. I mean, I compiled it, but you reviewed it. Elias, remember? We went through it on Thursday. You said it was clean. Elias looked at the kid. He remembered. He had skimmed it. He had been thinking about Vane. He had been thinking about the pen in his drawer. Just go in, Gary. Gary stood up. He straightened his tie. It was yellow today. Bright, optimistic yellow. He walked past Elias. He looked small. Elias went back to his office. He didn't close the door. He sat there and waited. 10 minutes passed. 15. Then, the sound of a door opening. Gary walked out. He wasn't wearing his jacket. He was carrying a box. A small cardboard box. He was crying. Not loudly. Just tears running down his face, silent and wet. He walked past Elias's office. He stopped. He looked at Elias. His eyes were red. You signed it, Gary whispered. Elias didn't move. You checked the box, Gary said. I asked you. You said it was good. It was a compliance issue, Gary, Elias said. His voice was 68 degrees. Compliance, Gary repeated. He looked at Elias with something that wasn't anger. It was pity. I thought you were the guy, Gary said. I thought you were the one who made the hard calls. I am, Elias said. No, Gary said. You're just the one who survives. He turned and walked away. The security guard was waiting at the elevator to escort him out. Elias watched him go. The yellow tie disappeared behind the steel doors. Elias sat alone. The phone rang. It was the director. It's done, the director said. Auditors are satisfied. We closed the file. Good work, Elias. Good work, Elias said. We have to protect the institution, the director said. Jerry is young. He'll bounce back. Maybe not in banking, but he'll be fine. Sure. By the way, the director continued, his voice shifting to a lighter tone. The first draw for the Vane Center just cleared. Vane sent a note. He wants to have a site visit next week. Wants you there? Me? I specifically requested you. Said he likes your consistency. Elias hung up. He felt a wave of nausea. Consistency. That was the word. Vane knew that Elias would sacrifice Gary. Vane had probably counted on it. By forcing the default, Vane hadn't just broken the bank's project. He had broken Elias's moral spine. He had forced Elias to choose between his own safety and an innocent kid's career. And Elias had chosen safety. Instantly, without hesitation. He looked at the computer screen. The email from Vane was there. Subject site visit. Body Mr. Thorne, I look forward to showing you the future. P.S. Bring the pen. Elias stared at the screen. Bring the pen. He opened the drawer. The black pen lay there. Elias reached out and touched it. His fingers were cold. He realized then that he wasn't just working for the bank anymore. He wasn't just a vice president. He was an asset. Vane owned the building. Vane owned the debt. And now, because Elias was complicit in the cover-up, Vane owned him too. Elias closed his hand around the pen. He squeezed until his knuckles turned white. He wanted to throw it through the window. He wanted to shatter the glass and let the real air in. But he didn't. He slipped the pen into his breast pocket. Right over his heart, it felt heavy, like a stone. Like a secret? Just business, he whispered. But the room didn't answer. The silence was different now. It wasn't empty. It was judging him. And outside, the cranes kept moving, building a monument to everything Elias had failed to be. The construction elevator was a cage of wire mesh and rattled steel. It smelled of grease and wet concrete. It did not feel safe. But Elias Thorne stepped inside because Marcus Vane was holding the door. Vane wore a hard hat. It was white, pristine. It sat on his head like a crown. Going up, the operator said. He was a burly man in a reflective vest, chewing gum with a slow, bovine rhythm. He pulled a lever. The motor groaned. The cage jerked upward. Elias grabbed the railing. The metal was cold and gritty. He looked through the mesh as the ground fell away. He saw the mud, the trucks, the tiny figures of workers moving rebar. He saw the city shrinking. It offers a different perspective, Vane said. His voice was barely audible over the grinding of the gears. Doesn't it? Elias didn't answer. He could feel the pen in his breast pocket. It was pressing against his ribs like a concealed weapon. He had come here to fight. He had rehearsed the words in the car. I know what you did. I know about North State. I know about the insurance. I am going to the board. He was going to be brave. For the first time in his life, he was going to be the man Gary thought he was. The elevator shuddered to a halt. Floor 40. The operator grunted. The gate rattled open. The wind hit them instantly. It was stronger up here, violent. It whipped Elias's tie over his shoulder. The floor was a vast open slab of concrete. No walls. No glass. Just pillars in the sky. Walk with me, Vane said. He stepped out onto the slab. He walked toward the edge. There was no railing. Just a yellow caution tape fluttering in the wind. Elias followed. He stayed 10 feet back. This is the penthouse level, Vane said, gesturing to the empty air. What changed the plans? The original design called for luxury condos. We are converting it to a community incubator. Tech spaces for local kids. A logistics command center. You use the bank's money to pivot, Elias shouted over the wind. I use my money, Vane corrected without turning around. The bank just processed the transaction. You stole the property. Vane turned then. He looked at Elias. The wind didn't seem to touch him? Stole? Vane asked. I bought it at market value. The market value was low. That is not theft. That is efficiency. You made it low. Elias stepped forward. You strangled the supply chain. You forced the default. That is racketeering. It is leverage. It is illegal. Prove it. The two words hung between them. Prove it? I have the records, Elias said. I found the connection to North State. I know about the shell companies. And I am going to the regulators. I am going to tell them everything. Elias felt a surge of adrenaline. He had said it. He had drawn the line. Vane looked at him. He didn't look worried. He looked tired. Elias. Vane said he used his first name. It sounded intimate, disturbing. Do you really think the regulators care about a supply chain dispute? They care about fraud? What fraud? Vane took a step closer. I prioritize my own contracts. That is business. Paulson failed to secure his logistics. That is incompetence. The bank failed to insure the risk. That is negligence. He paused. Your negligence, Elias stiffened. That was a clerical error. Was it? Vane asked. Or was it a convenient scapegoat? What was the boy's name? Gary. The air left Elias's lungs. How? I make it my business to know the casualties, Vane said. Gary Wilson. 20, 5 years old. Fired for cause? D needs severance. Blacklisted from the industry? Vane shook his head. You killed him, Elias? Metaphorically speaking. You slit his throat to save your own neck. I had to, Elias whispered. Exactly, Vane said. You had to, because the system required a sacrifice. And you are a creature of the system. I am not like you. You are exactly like me, Vane said. The only difference is that I know what I am. I am a predator. You think you are a victim. But look at what you did. You denied my loan because you were afraid. You approved my deposit because you were greedy. You fired the boy because you were cowardly. Vane pointed a gloved finger at Elias's chest, right at the pocket with the pen. You have been my partner every step of the way. No, Elias said. I'm done. I'm going to report this. If you report me, Vane said softly, I will release the audit trail of the deposits. The ones you approved. The ones from the very company you claim was sabotaging the project. I will show that you accepted personal favors, a certain gold pen, while managing a conflict of interest. The pen, Elias laughed. It was a hysterical, brittle sound. It's a $50 pen. It is an undeclared gift from a client you were actively investigating, Vane said. Combined with the firing of a junior analyst to cover up your own oversight, it looks like conspiracy, Elias. It looks like you were working for me all along? Elias froze. The logic was twisted, but it was solid. If he spoke up now, he wouldn't look like a whistleblower. He would look like an accomplice trying to cut a deal. He was trapped. Vane saw the realization in his eyes. The system survives, Vane said. That is the only rule. You tried to protect the bank from me. But you failed. Do you know why? Why? Because the bank doesn't care about you. It cares about capital. And I have more capital than you have conscience. Vane reached into his jacket. He pulled out a folded document. The wind tried to snatch it, but Vane held it firm. This is the final draw request, Vane said. For the interior fit-out, $20 million. He held it out. Sign it. I can't. You must. Why? Because if you don't, Vane said, I will move my accounts to Chase by close of business today. Sterling and Harrows will lose its biggest liquidity source. The stock will tank. And the board will look for someone to blame. Who do you think they will choose? The billionaire investor or the vice president who lost the client? Elias looked at the paper. He looked at the drop, 40 stories down. If he refused, he was fired, ruined, investigated. If he signed, he was owned. But he would be safe. He would keep his office. He would keep his 68 degrees. He would keep his pension. He reached into his pocket. He pulled out the black pen. His hand was shaking. That's it, Vane said soothingly. Use the tool. Elias uncapped the pen. The gold nib glinted in the gray light. He pressed the paper against a concrete pillar. The rough surface made the paper bumpy. He signed his name, Elias Thorne. The ink flowed smooth and dark. It looked like blood turning black. He handed the paper to Vane. Vane took it. He checked the signature. He nodded. Thank you, Elias. Vane turned to look at the view again. It will be a beautiful building, Vane said. You should be proud. You helped build it. Elias stood there. He felt light, unbearably light. Something inside him had snapped. Not a bone, not a muscle. But the tether that held him to his own self-respect, it was gone. He wasn't a banker anymore. He wasn't a man, he was a function. A rubber stamp. A hollow thing that wore a suit. Can I go? Elias asked. His voice sounded like a child's. Of course, Vane said. The elevator is waiting. Elias walked back to the cage. He stepped inside. The operator looked at him. Down, down, Elias said. The gate rattled shut. As the elevator began to descend, Elias looked up. He saw Marcus Vane standing on the edge of the abyss, a black silhouette against a gray sky. Vane raised a hand in a wave. Not a wave of goodbye. A wave of ownership. The elevator dropped. The floor rushed up to meet him. Elias closed his eyes. He wished the cable would snap. He wished he could just fall. But the system doesn't let you fall. It lowers you inch by inch until you are safely back in the mud, right where you belong. The elevator hit the ground with a thud. Watch your step, the operator said. Elias walked out. He walked past the workers. He walked past the trucks. He walked to his Audi. He got in. He locked the doors. He looked at the pen in his hand. He should throw it away. He should drive into the river. Instead, he put the pen back in his pocket. He started the car. He checked his mirrors. He put on his turn signal. He drove back to the bank, because it was Tuesday, and he had work to do. The scissors were silver. They were oversized, ceremonial, and ridiculous. But when Marcus Vane squeezed the handles, the sound of the red ribbon being cut was sharp. Snip. A polite applause rippled through the crowd. It was a cold Tuesday in November. 1 year and 2 weeks since the incident. Elias Thorne stood on the dais 3 feet to the right of Marcus Vane. He was clapping. His hands came together in a steady, rhythmic motion. He was wearing a new suit, navy blue, Italian wool. He was wearing a new watch. He was wearing the smile of a man who had just been named the new regional director of Sterling and Harrows. The building behind them soared into the gray sky. The Vane Center. It was a masterpiece of glass and light. It housed the logistics hub, the community tech incubator, and on the top 10 floors, the most expensive commercial real estate in the city. It was a symbol of progress. It was a symbol of partnership. "Thank you," Vane said into the microphone. His voice boomed across the plaza, echoing off the stone. "This building is proof of what happens when vision meets capital," Vane said. "It is proof that friction can create heat, and heat can forge steel." He looked at Elias. The crowd looked at Elias. "I want to thank my partners at Sterling and Harrows," Vane continued. "Specifically Mr. Elias Thorne, a man who understands the value of rigorous standards." The crowd applauded again. They didn't know. They saw 2 men in suits. They saw a black billionaire and a white banker standing side by side. They saw a success story. They didn't see the ghost of Gary Wilson, who was currently working the night shift at a warehouse in Jersey City. They didn't see the $40 million write-off that the bank had buried in the footnotes of the annual report. They didn't see the invisible wire that ran from Vane's pocket to Elias's throat. The ceremony ended. The music started. A jazz quartet played something smooth and inoffensive. Waiters circulated with trays of champagne. Elias stepped off the stage. He was immediately surrounded. "Great work, Elias," said a board member. "Incredible turnaround," said a city councilman. "You have the golden touch," said a developer who wanted a loan. Elias nodded. He shook hands. He accepted the praise. He had learned the language of the aftermath. You don't deny the past. You rebrand it. The Paulson default was now referred to as the strategic realignment. The refusal was now the initial risk assessment. Everything had a name that made it sound safe. Elias made his way to the bar. He ordered a sparkling water with a twist of lime. He didn't drink alcohol anymore. It made him talk too much, and he had secrets to keep. Mr. Thorne. Elias turned. It was Sarah from Risk. She had been promoted too. She was now the VP of Compliance. She raised her glass. "To the victors," she said softly. "To the survivors," Elias corrected. "Same thing," she said. She took a sip. "Vane looks happy. He owns the block now." "Literally? He always owned it?" Elias said. "We just didn't read the deed." Sarah laughed. "You're funny, Elias. You used to be so serious." "Leadership suits you." She patted his arm. "By the way," she added, "we have a new batch of analysts starting Monday. I need you to give the orientation speech. Talk about ethics, corporate culture, that sort of thing." "Ethics," Elias repeated. "Yeah, inspire them. Tell them how we do things at Sterling and Harrows." "I'll tell them," Elias said. Sarah drifted away. Elias watched her go. He felt a hand on his shoulder. He didn't need to turn around to know who it was. The grip was firm. "Heavy. A good day," Marcus Vane said. Elias turned. Vane was holding 2 glasses of champagne. He offered one to Elias. "I'm drinking water," Elias said. "Make an exception," Vane said. "It's a celebration. It wasn't a request." Elias took the glass. "To the hidden truth?" Vane whispered. He clinked his glass against Elias's. The sound was delicate, crystal on crystal. "What truth is that?" Elias asked. "That the refusal was the best thing you ever did for me," Vane said. He took a slow sip, his eyes locked on Elias. "If you had given me the loan that day," Vane said, "I would just be a borrower. I would owe the bank money. I would be subservient to your interest rates." He smiled. "But because you said no, I became the bank's savior. I bought your bad debt. I saved your balance sheet. And now the bank answers to me." Vane leaned in closer. "You didn't block me, Elias. You catapulted me. You showed me that the only way to beat the gatekeeper is to buy the gate." Elias felt the cold glass in his hand. He looked at the bubbles rising to the surface. "I ruined a kid's life," Elias said. "Collateral damage," Vane said. The cost of doing business. And what am I? Elias asked. Am I collateral? No, Vane said. You are infrastructure. You are the pipes. You are the wiring. You are essential? Vane patted his shoulder again. Don't look so grim, Vane said. You won. You are the director. You have the corner office. You have the view. I have your pen, Elias said. Vane's smile widened. Yes, keep it close. We have a lot of papers to sign next year. Vane walked away. He moved through the crowd like a shark moving through water. People parted for him. They touched his arm. They sought his blessing. Elias stood alone. He looked at the champagne. He tipped the glass. He poured the expensive gold liquid onto the concrete floor. It made a small puddle near his polished shoes. He set the empty glass on a passing tray. He walked out of the party. He walked past the security guards. He walked back to the bank tower across the street. It was 8:00 p.m. The lobby was empty. The elevator took him to the top floor. The doors opened. The sign on the wall had been changed. Office of the Regional Director. Elias walked in. The air was 68 degrees. The hum was there, the eternal electric hum of money sleeping. He sat at the massive mahogany desk. It was bigger than his old one. The view was spectacular. He could see the Vane Center glowing in the dark. He opened the top drawer. He took out the black fountain pen. He placed it on the green leather blotter. It was the only thing on the desk. He had everything he had ever wanted. Safety, status, power. And it had only cost him everything that mattered. The phone rang. It was the night line. Elias stared at it. He shouldn't answer. He was the director now, but the habit was deep. He picked it up. Sterling and Harrows, he said. Mr. Thorne. It was a young voice, nervous. This is the night desk. We have an urgent application, a small business loan. The algorithm flagged it as high risk, but the applicant says he has a history with the branch. He's pleading for an override. What's the business? Elias asked. It's a bakery. In the West Ward, the owner is well, the zip code is a problem. Elias closed his eyes. He could see the bakery. He could see the flour, the hope. He could see the gray button. On the screen downstairs. The zip code is a problem? Elias repeated. Yes, sir. Should I override? He says he just needs a chance. Elias looked at the black pen. He looked at the glowing tower across the street. He remembered the lesson: mercy is a weakness. Rules are shields. To survive, you must be the gate. No, Elias said. His voice was calm. Dead? Follow the protocol? If the system flagged it, there is a reason. Decline the loan? But, sir, decline it? Elias said. And mark it reason code 7, alpha, yes, sir. The line clicked dead. Elias hung up the phone. He picked up the pen. He held it like a weapon. He realized then that the title of his life had changed. It wasn't about the banker who refused a billionaire. That was just the prologue. The real story was about a man who learned that in a world built on gold, the only way to stay safe is to turn your heart into stone. He capped the pen. Click. The sound was loud in the empty room. Elias swiveled his chair to face the window. He watched the city lights flicker. He sat in the dark. He sat in the cold. And he waited for the next command. Thank you for listening. If this story stayed with you, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need to hear it.